Thanks very much, Rebecca. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk about mentorship, teaching and mentorship. I advance my slides, I guess, with the green arrow.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I have nothing relevant to this to disclose. Not sure what possibly could be relevant to disclose. That could be a conflict for, yeah, but you do need a slide. So there you have it. So this is the obligatory slide in any talk about mentorship. Everyone always has a picture of a mentor. So the story and the origin of the term mentor is from Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus went off to fight in the Trojan War, he left his son Telemachus in the care of his entrusted friend, Mentor, who was there to nurture, guide, support his son, and that's where the term comes from. Also, other relevant terms related to mentor are terms like coach. A coach is someone who teaches or instructs, usually around a specific aspect of performance, which has a lot of associations with what mentorship is, but is a little bit different as well. A mentor isn't really a sponsor, who is someone who provides means, resources, that sort of thing. It's really someone who, as you'll see, provides information that's felt to be useful by someone else, particularly where there's a situation of asymmetry. You can't be a mentor to someone if you're kind of on the same level of a hierarchy. You have to have something that the other person perceives as value, and that should be social support, knowledge, social capital, these types of contributions. Mentorship generally occurs in a one-to-one encounter. It can be formal and structured or informal. A lot of mentorship relationships are somewhat informal, and in fact, sometimes mentorship is something you do and you have no idea you're even doing it. Someone may point out to you a few years later, yeah, thanks for being my mentor, and you'd say, well, oh, that's what I was doing. I thought we were just chatting every once in a while. When you want to have a structured mentorship relationship, though, it shouldn't be an informal relationship, as you'll see. It should be something that's organized, that's scheduled, that has some type of organization around it. However, mentorship works best if it's not imposed. So often programs will kind of assign a mentor to a student. Sometimes those relationships work out great, often they don't. But the ones that occur organically tend to be much more useful for everyone involved. And the other important thing to remember about mentorship is you're assisting someone, you're lifting them up. Sometimes it's also important to know how to get out of the way, especially if there's only room for one person at the summit. People tend not to have a single mentor for all of their purposes. Often in your career, in my career, and I'm sure yours as well, you've sought mentorship from different types of people at different times, because mentorship can relate to your career goals, it can relate to research, it can relate to your clinical development as a surgeon, particularly around areas of work-life balance and how to structure your life to have a very satisfying life in all of its various dimensions. And there's another important issue about concordance, and this particularly relates to areas around diversity or underrepresented groups, sex and gender-related issues. Often it's very important for people to have a mentor who's concordant, who faces the same challenges as they do or who looks like them, and that can't be understated as well. That doesn't apply to all the various reasons why you'd need a mentor, but particularly for some of the issues that relate to advancement and life balance, it's very, very useful to have a mentor who's concordant with you. So mentorship has to be active. It's not something that occurs passively or naturally. And I'm going to just talk about a few of the high points relating to mentorship. There is a sweet spot of how much challenge that you should present to your mentee and how much support you should give them. And what you want to do is aim for high challenge, high support, so that results in growth. That's the top left corner of the 2x2 table. There's going to be a couple of other 2x2 tables, and the top left corner is not always the right answer, but in this case, you want support and challenge, because just support without challenging your mentee may result in validation of their capabilities, but it doesn't allow growth. So very important is to establish milestones and measure outcomes. So When I first started my career, I was assigned to a mentor who was a surgeon-in-chief at another hospital. And the best piece of advice that he gave me, and this is the advice I give to everyone else, is have a document, have a matrix or a grid. Can be an electronic document that you update periodically, and that should have all the things you're trying to achieve on it. So list your grants that you want to get, papers that are important, types of advancement, objectives, but make sure that there is a document and keep it a living document and refer back to it. And it's very important to keep that matrix, and you can use that eventually to assess how successful you are in your career advancement. So that's critical, as well as the commitment of both parties to participate in this mentorship relationship. So have a matrix, it has to exist and it has to be measurable, and the outcomes should be clear and defined. Make sure you have scheduled meetings, and typically meetings with a mentor are not weekly and they're generally not monthly. They should probably be more frequent than annually, and it's better to schedule them and cancel them when you need to, rather than, we'll just figure out how to schedule a meeting when we need to, because those things that you're left to schedule will never happen. I tell people all the time with my students, much better to cancel than to try and figure out how to arrange an appointment when you need one. The things that you'll help support your mentee with are a lot of these types of things that you've heard about this morning. It's important to know, though, you're not a collaborator with your mentee. If you're kind of working on the same project or they work for you, you're not really their mentor. You shouldn't really have a strong interest in exactly all the research that they're doing. This really isn't about collaboration. It's about more general, higher level advice. And one of the other important things you do to your mentee is you reveal this tacit knowledge about the world that's not written down anywhere, and people generally don't know, and you just kind of have to get it from someone who has access to this information. And that's why that asymmetry of power and information is very important in a mentor-mentee relationship, because you're trying to give a person stuff that they just can't get openly by searching Google or something like that. And there's different forms of this types of hidden knowledge. A lot of it relates to grantsmanship and how to be very effective in getting funding that you may not have ready access to, how to work the system, how to get ahead, who are the important people, to know what you can tell them, what you can't tell them, how regulation works, these types of things. One very important thing that you can advise people for success is how to structure their time and their work week. Even though we don't necessarily do this ourselves, it's probably the one really useful thing you can tell to a person that you're mentoring. But bottom line is, if something doesn't appear in your calendar and you're not scheduling for it, then you've decided implicitly or whatever that it's not important to you. And this comes from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective People. There's different quadrants. This is my last 2x2 table, but things can be important. That's on the up and down axis, or they can be urgent. And we're always focused on quadrant 1, which is urgent and important. So an example of something that's urgent and important is what? That's perfect. Okay, great. An emergency operation. You got to do it. It's got to be done now. And we generally have no problem with urgent and important. The problem we have is with which quadrant here? I heard it. Yeah. Yeah, 2. So 2 is critical, and these are an example of something that's not urgent but it's really important. Yeah, so writing a talk in advance, a grant, something they don't necessarily, the deadline isn't tomorrow, and we all kind of work to deadline, but you have to schedule this in your calendar. And if it's not in your calendar, you've decided it's not important to you. Don't get, we can get absorbed in trivia. Quadrant 3 is, your email inbox and just responding to things that are just trivia that may seem important at the time, so urgent at the time, but really are not important in the grand scheme. So if you have to only give one message, remember one message to give to someone that you're mentoring, tell them about this. So just to wrap up, best practices for mentors: be in the moment, present, prepared, know who you're speaking with, maybe see your CV, look at their CV, make sure there's time in your schedule to mentor them. Promote your mentee, give them opportunities, introduce them to people at meetings, check in with them between meetings by email, etc. Sorry for going through this quickly. I suspect these slides will be available. If not, email me. If you're a mentee, Make sure you have a clearly defined goal. How can this mentor help me achieve my goals? Try and be as specific as possible, as well as respectful of your mentor's time, etc. How do you measure success? It's basically measured through how your mentee is progressing. Is this person being promoted, achieving goals, etc.? And if you're still meeting, looking at yourself, then it's working. Both people perceive value in the relationship. So thanks very much. This I remember about 20 years ago being in your shoes right now. It's a very exciting time in all your lives, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.